The Strait of Hormuz. A Kali-Fars anti-ship missile skims the waves. It costs about $1 million to build. Its target? A VLCC, essentially a floating reservoir for the world's crude oil. A direct hit to the engine room. Data from Clarksons reveals a brutal reality. This $128 million heavy asset has just been physically wiped off the map. In the dry, clinical language of insurance, we call this a constructive total loss.
Here's the real irony about geopolitics. It's not the conflict itself, but what happens right after. Look at the giants running global trade today, like Maersk or MSC. Even while the smoke is clearing, they have to face a simple reality. They just can't fix their supply chain without China.
CSSC, the China State Shipbuilding Corporation, a true Leviathan of the seas. Their order books are already backlogged until 2029. In a strange twist of economics, every ship lost to global conflict effectively turns into fresh profit on this balance sheet.
It has created a near-perfect feedback loop. You destroy ships, we build them. In the current architecture of global trade, China has become the only superfactory capable of this kind of saturation-level supply.
The dominance is total. In early 2026, over 90% of new VLCC orders flowed to China. Of 155 tankers under construction, China holds 70%. Former leader South Korea squeezed to less than 15%. The monopoly is spreading across the board. From bulk carriers to container ships and even vehicle carriers, China's grip ranges from 70 to 90%. Even in high-tech LNG ships, China is systematically dismantling South Korea's final moat. The Middle East might control the oil, but the vessels that carry it are locked in China's dry docks. Behind this lies a 45-year sovereign bet on national industrial will. Let's rewind the clock to 1977 to see how a nation on the brink of collapse began its high-stakes gamble to rule the oceans. (1977). China stood at the periphery of the world, nearly forgotten. It was the wreckage of a decade-long cultural revolution, economic paralysis, and a society suspended in the silence before a seismic shift. China's economy was a mere 8% the size of the US. With per capita GDP at just $185, the nation ranked 131st in the world. At the time, the state shipbuilding complex, the precursor to CSSC, held a microscopic 0.6% of the global market.
But beyond the data, the biggest issue back then was how frozen the thinking was. In China at that time, being anti-West and anti-market was the only rule. People were extremely poor and totally isolated from the rest of the world. It basically cut off any connection to modern industry.
With the return of Deng Xiaoping, the ideological shackles of the past decade were cast aside. He pivoted the nation toward the hard reality of pragmatism, famously declaring that it doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice, it's a good cat. A giant of 1 billion people was changing course, moving away from ideological debate to focus on the machinery of economic growth. December 6, 1977. During a high-level briefing on the shipbuilding sector, Deng Xiaoping issued what would become a historic industrial mandate. The directive was clear. The industry must aggressively adopt advanced foreign technology, and Chinese vessels must force their way into the international market.
Deng insisted on total technology adoption, a total revolution. For the shipbuilders, this wasn't just an export goal. They desperately needed that one international order just to prove they could survive in the modern world. The change was starting, but it was going to cost them a lot.
Nestled in the heart of Beijing's embassy district, the Zhaolong Hotel remains one of the city's most iconic landmarks, standing 22 stories tall at nearly 80 meters. This modernist structure was one of Beijing's loftiest heights in the 1980s. Boasting 500 luxury rooms and a heated indoor pool, a rare extravagance for its time. Yet, few realize that the rise of this grand landmark was far more than a commercial venture. It was a meticulously designed political experiment by the world's premier shipowner, Sir Y.K. Pao. In the 1980s shipping world, Pao was the most powerful private shipowner on Earth, with Worldwide Shipping, the flagship company under his command, boasting a fleet of over 200 megavessels and a total capacity exceeding 20 million tons.
Back then, China was desperate for that first international shipping order to break into the global market. And Sir I.K. Pao was the perfect ally. But Pao was a very smart, very practical businessman. He looked at China, which was just opening its doors, and wanted to know one simple thing. Was this country truly ready for global capital? Or was it just a trap to lure capitalists in and wipe them out?
He designed two tests, a probe into the political wind and a pressure test of industrial limits. The secret to the first lay within this hotel. In March 1980, Pao offered a $10 million donation to build the Zhaolong Hotel, named in honor of his father. Today, it's seen as philanthropy. In 1980, it was a political lightning rod. To the bureaucracy of that era, accepting a capitalist's fortune and honoring a private individual's name was a dangerous ideological transgression. For an entire year, no government department dared to touch the check.
Pao wrote with cold, calculated detachment. To him, if the Chinese government dared to accept this donation, it would be the ultimate proof of a genuine opening. If they refused, the political risk remained structural and absolute. He was waiting for a verdict.
It wasn't until July 1981 that Deng Xiaoping personally intervened. When Deng accepted the check and brushed the hotel's name in his own calligraphy, he sent an unmistakable signal to global markets. China's opening was sincere, and there was no turning back.
Once the trust was there, the next test was much harder. Could Chinese shipyards actually build to global standards? To find out, Pao ordered the Great Wall at the Dalian shipyard, China's very first 10,000-ton export ship. But at that time, China couldn't even build a single engine that met international rules.
To keep the deal alive, Minister Cai Shufan took a step that bordered on madness. He issued a personal letter of guarantee to Pao in his capacity as a state minister. He promised that the Dalian shipyard would adhere strictly to the rigorous standards of Lloyd's Register. As minister, I guarantee this vessel will be delivered on schedule. If any quality issues arise, I take full responsibility. In 1980, for a high-ranking official to stake his political life on a capitalist's business was a move of staggering proportions. A $10 million check and a heavy ministerial guarantee. Finally, the King of the Seas was ready to give China its chance. The real test for China's shipbuilders was not physical steel. It was a confrontation with an entrenched bureaucracy. For decades, ideological tension had made anti-Western sentiment a default position, causing advanced technology to be viewed with suspicion. On the factory floor, 30 years of isolation had bred a culture of raw intuition. Master workers relied on personal experience rather than exact metrics. To test their capability, management staged a welding competition before construction began. Professional Japanese welders competed against China's top technicians on identical plates. Under the strict rules of Lloyd's Register, radiographic testing revealed 25 minor flaws in the Japanese welds. The Chinese experts had 300. The data forced an immediate shift. Political dogma gave way to hard pragmatism. Management realized that Western engineering was superior, and that to survive, the shipyard had to stop resisting and begin to learn.
Pao was a very practical businessman, and he wasn't going to risk his money on emotions. So he gave absolute quality control to a British inspector named Allen from Lloyd's Register. And Allen was not there to be nice. Early on, he tested 3 main parts of the ship and flagged over 2,400 defects. Pointing at tiny holes that the workers thought were perfect, Allen said, "This kind of welding, in Britain, goes straight to the scrapyard."
The weight of that sentence crashed down through the bureaucracy, from the Minister of Shipbuilding to the individual welders. Traditional routines and master worker empiricism held zero currency under Lloyd's rules. The shipyard was forced into a painful systemic restructuring, weaponizing those 2,434 points of shame into a ruthless, metrics-driven management architecture known as the individual clearing system. It was designed to systematically destroy the traditional culture of close enough. The rules were uncompromised. First, uniqueness. Each of the 2,434 defects was assigned a non-interchangeable serial number. Second, strict accountability. Beneath every number, 3 distinct signatures were mandatory: the primary welder, the team leader, and the quality inspector. No one could deflect blame. Finally, a physical closed loop. Once a defect was reworked, Allen himself had to verify it on site and physically cross it off the ledger. Without his personal signature, that steel plate remained a legal industrial reject, and no one possessed the authority to move it to the next stage of assembly. This war between modern systems and historical inertia reached its most brutal phase during the Dalian winter of 1981. Situated at 39 degrees north latitude, Bohai Bay in winter operates as a massive freezer. Biting Siberian gales easily pierce thick canvas workwear. Yet in this extreme environment, the shipyard confronted a lethal physics problem. The thermodynamic properties of steel dictate that if the ambient temperature gradient is too steep, the cooling metal at the weld will contract violently, generating catastrophic cold cracking. In commercial shipping, this meant structural failure. To maintain quality amidst the deep freeze, the workforce was forced into a stark confrontation between human flesh and the laws of physics. The lone defense against cold cracking was preheating. Before a single weld could be struck, workers used heavy industrial blowtorches to heat the thick steel plates to over 150 degrees Celsius, while the ambient air on the open berth stood at -20. This yielded the grittiest visual on the slips. In the driving snow, welders crouched flat across the scorching, radiating steel plates. In front of them was an electric arc burning at thousands of degrees, searing their chests. Behind them was an ocean gale cold enough to instantly freeze frost onto their eyelashes. On September 14, 1981, the Great Wall slid into the waters of Dalian precisely on schedule. It was the first vessel constructed in China to be registered in the 122-year history of Lloyd's Register. For the Western shipping establishment, it was an improbable milestone.
The success of this ship was way more than just a regular export. It was like a graduation ceremony for Chinese industry. Standing on the shore, Pao watched the ship launch. As a top businessman, he saw 2 things here: a government that could endure anything, and something even better for business. This place had the most efficient and disciplined workers on Earth. For global capital, it was the perfect place to make money. Pao didn't hesitate. He immediately ordered 6 more massive ships. And just like that, the era of CSSC began.
Until the early 1990s, China lacked anything resembling a modern, large-scale shipbuilding hub. The Great Wall proved China could meet the world's most stringent standards. Yet that was merely a victory for small-scale workshops. It was a grueling, low-tech triumph, leveraging sheer human depletion to bridge a massive technological deficit.
Top leadership saw the issue. They knew hard work could buy a few temporary orders, but it would never give them real dominance over the oceans. They needed a massive infrastructure campaign, and they needed it fast. The real goal? To completely redraw the shape of the coastline.
1993. Construction began on Shanghai Waigaoqiao. This wasn't a mere factory expansion, it was an engineering assault on nature. Out of the East China Sea mudflats, China reclaimed land, carving out a 5 million square meter industrial empire. That is the size of 700 football fields. This milestone marked the death of the workshop era. China had officially pivoted to modern shipbuilding. And this was just the prologue. 2005, Shanghai initiated the Changqing Island Megabase, the planet's ultimate shipbuilding fortress. Phase 1 immediately deployed 4 300,000-ton VLCC dry docks. Phase 2 pushed harder. It added a colossal dry dock, 590 meters long, 120 meters wide. engineered specifically for aircraft carriers and mega LNG vessels. Soon after, another ultra-large dry dock emerged, dedicated solely to mass-producing LNG carriers. Today, South Korea's entire combined fleet of giant dry docks can barely rival this single island. This dry dock hegemony directly unlocked the parallel construction model. Here, shipbuilding mirrors a high-speed assembly line. Changxing can simultaneously build one aircraft carrier, 2 VLCCs, 4 mega container ships, and 2 LNG vessels. The 24,000 TEU giants born here stretch 400 meters. That outlinks the world's largest nuclear-powered aircraft carrier by over 60 meters. Hovering over these superdocks is the industry's crown jewel, the gantry crane. As the adage goes, the tonnage of your crane dictates your status in the yard. These colossal frames act as the hand of God. Modern shipbuilding is essentially stacking blocks. Thousands of tons of steel are pre-assembled into hundreds of independent modules, fully outfitted with complex piping and systems. The crane lifts them, locking them together like Lego bricks. Every extra 100 tons of lifting capacity means fewer modules, faster assembly, and accelerated capital turnover. In shipping, speed is survival. In 2008, China's Typhoon was completed in Yantai, boasting a 20,000-ton lifting capacity that shattered the Guinness World Record. What does 20,000 tons look like? It can lift 14,000 cars simultaneously, or the entire bow of a medium-sized aircraft carrier. In 2014, the Honkai broke it again at 22,000 tons. That is equivalent to lifting 400 high-speed rail carriages through midair. In 2011, when the United Kingdom set out to build its Queen Elizabeth-class carriers at the Rosyth dockyard, they faced a stark reality. No domestic machinery could lift their own massive hull modules. They had to order a 1,000-ton giant gantry crane from China. The reality is clear. Wherever you build a capital ship today, you cannot bypass Chinese machinery. Today, over 80% of the world's large gantry cranes originate from China.
Around 2010, while developed nations were moving away from industry and focusing on finance and real estate, China did something unique. It became the only country on Earth with a complete industrial system, covering all 41 major categories and over 600 subsectors. The absolute only one. Decades of heavy investment created a brutal moat. Today, within a 300-kilometer radius of any Chinese shipyard, you can find every single material and component you need. It's a massive, tight cluster. This gives Chinese yards the lowest logistical costs on Earth. In contrast, a German shipyard has to source parts across different countries or continents. That means more expensive freight and total vulnerability to geopolitical shocks.
For global shipping, 2021 was a watershed moment. After a brutal 12-year ice age that paralyzed the industry from 2008 to 2020, the market staged a violent, unprecedented rebound. That year, global orders for new vessels skyrocketed to 46.64 million tons, a staggering 139% surge year on year. Yet in this massive capital feast, it was China that walked away with half the board, 22.86 million tons. When it came to ultra-large container ships, the 24,000 TEU ocean Leviathans, China swept over half of the global order book. These contracts were so thick, they effectively locked down Chinese shipyard capacity through 2025 and beyond.
Why did the huge market boom of 2021 belong exclusively to China? The real answer isn't in the contracts signed that year. It was actually written during the dark, 12-year winter that came right before it.
The 2008 subprime meltdown abruptly terminated a 6-year expansion in global trade, crushing global shipbuilding output from a peak of 160 million tons to just 90 million. This decade-long purge bled shipyards across Europe, Japan, and South Korea into bankruptcy. South Korea's maritime workforce plummeted from 94,000 to 60,000. In 2015 alone, its 3 corporate titans logged a combined loss of 40 billion yuan. In Japan, Sumitomo aggressively rolled back capacity, while Mitsui E&S permanently shuttered its historic, half-century-old Chiba shipyard in 2021.
Yet, during those exact same 12 years of winter, Beijing was quietly making a massive, expensive, counter-cyclical investment. Phase 1. Manufacturing artificial demand. With global trade paralyzed and international orders completely blank, Chinese yards were about to go under. Beijing's strategy was very simple. Just create a market out of thin air.
From 2013 to 2017, the state rolled out a sweeping subsidy initiative for scrapping and renewing obsolete transport vessels. The mandate to domestic shipping conglomerates was unambiguous. Decommission legacy fleets ahead of schedule, reorder from domestic yards, and pocket a premium subsidy of 1,500 yuan per gross ton. This massive injection of state liquidity modernized domestic fleets while insulating shipyard order books. It kept production lines warm while global demand was non-existent, preserving China's ultimate asset, its highly skilled workforce and elite engineering corps.
Phase 2, the White List, a real case of industrial Darwinism. But look, government money was never meant to save zombie companies. In 2014, at the worst moment for the global market, the Ministry of Industry rolled out the Shipbuilding White List.
Only 51 Tier 1 shipyards made the cut. Capital allocation and credit lines from state banks were channeled exclusively into these elite, technologically advanced champions. This wasn't a mere bailout, it was a cold-blooded consolidation. By deliberately starving out the weak, China weaponized the winter to eliminate hundreds of obsolete private yards.
Phase 3, the merging of Leviathans. Now, we've been calling it CSSC, but back in 1999, the original state monopoly was actually split into two. You had CSSC in the South China and CSIC in the North China. The idea back then was to create competition and weed out the weak. But 20 years later, these two giants merged right back together, becoming China's single super Leviathan. This move completely stopped the price wars between them on the global stage. It gave the new CSSC huge leverage when dealing with shipping titans like Maersk and MSC. At its core, this was a clear shift toward total consolidation and monopoly.
Thus, when global commerce abruptly awoke in 2021, Western ship owners panicked. They found the dry docks of Japan and South Korea barren, hollowed out, and their elite workforces long scattered. For these competitors, scaling capacity back up would take years. Only China stood ready. Those sprawling networks of interconnected megadocks, meticulously insulated and sustained by state credit through 12 years of winter, were fully optimized, fully manned, and primed for immediate deployment. This was no commercial coincidence. The market explosion of 2021 was the inevitable climax of a 12-year siege. By weaponizing the winter, China successfully exhausted its global rivals, and upon the ashes of the old order, established an iron monopoly over the oceans. In the shipping industry's balance sheet, tonnage never equates to profit. The real premium is hidden within complexity. Consider the modern market benchmarks: a 300,000-ton VLCC oil tanker versus a 174,000 cubic meter LNG carrier. A VLCC is a basic industrial commodity with a single vessel price of around $130 million. Because the technical thresholds are completely transparent, global competition has dragged its profit margin down to a razor-thin 5 to 8%. But an LNG ship is an elite, high-barrier asset, commanding a price up to $270 million, with a stable profit margin between 15 and 25%. Building one LNG carrier yields the revenue of 2 VLCCs, but the net profit it contributes rivals 4 of them combined. It is rightfully crowned as the jewel on the crown of shipbuilding. The core mission of an LNG carrier is to transport liquefied natural gas at a constant minus 163 degrees Celsius. This presents a lethal physics equation, the destructive force of thermal contraction. Standard ship-grade steel will violently shrink at this temperature, instantly tearing the hull apart. To defeat physics, the vessel relies on Invar steel, a specialized nickel-iron alloy that remains dimensionally stable under extreme cold. The Invar steel lining the inner tank is only 0.7 millimeters thick, identical to a standard credit card. Inside a massive 300-meter hull, welding technicians must manually seal over 130 kilometers of these razor-thin seams. Invar steel is hypersensitive to impurities. During the process, if a single drop of sweat falls onto the weld, the resulting microscopic pore will mutate into a structural rupture under the stress of minus 163 degrees. Once liquefied gas leaks, it vaporizes instantly, expanding its volume 600 times. It is the exact operational equivalent of detonating a bomb inside the hull. For decades, the structural design and construction codes were completely monopolized by France's GTT, which enforced a steep 5% royalty on every single hull, a levy known in the industry as the GTT tax. South Korean shipyards handled the construction, and together with GTT, they siphoned off the vast majority of the industry's profits. But by early 2026, the paradigm broke. China mastered the 0.7mm Invar welding technology, deployed its fully independent fifth-generation design, and compressed the construction cycle by 20%. Prior to 2022, South Korea commanded 90% of global LNG orders. By the first quarter of 2026, China's market share in new LNG vessel orders surged past 40%. France's GTT realized that without close cooperation with Chinese yards, its technology could no longer scale.
So why can't Japan, South Korea, or Western nations just reopen their old shipyards and take back the market? The real bottleneck is one of the rarest industrial assets on Earth: massive dry docks. Building a dock that can hold a 400-meter ship costs hundreds of millions of dollars and takes up to 10 years just for environmental reviews and construction. In the West, strict environmental rules and crazy high land costs make building these giants politically impossible. This massive catch-up cost is China's ultimate moat. The second layer of dominance is total ecosystem lock-in. Even if a European ship owner tries to avoid Chinese risk by ordering from a shipyard in Turkey or Vietnam, they still can't escape. Just look at the parts list and the reality is clear. The ship's heart, the massive engine designed by Switzerland's Wing D, is actually built inside a CSSC factory. The control systems and even the critical valves come straight from cities like Dalian, Nantong, or Jiangyin. China is no longer just a simple assembly plant. It has become the master component supplier for the global maritime world.
If infrastructure and supply chains define the present, China has already written the rules for the next 50 years under the banner of decarbonization. Dual-fuel automotive carriers and ammonia-powered tankers are the frontline assets of carbon neutrality. A dual-fuel car carrier must stack 7,000 to 9,000 vehicles. Its silhouette is massive, rising like a floating 13-story building. Its center of gravity is exceptionally high, leaving a zero-tolerance margin for calculating the metacentric height. Worse, it carries lithium-ion electric vehicles. A single thermal runaway event will trigger a chain explosion inside sealed decks. Chinese shipyards engineered the global standard to counter this. An integrated smart temperature control combined with a high-pressure water mist system. For ammonia-powered tankers, the barrier is the toxic and corrosive nature of the fuel itself. A micron-level leak means disaster, demanding aerospace-grade vacuum sealing. Chinese shipyards broke through this by conquering high-pressure common rail and double-walled piping technologies, legally trapping toxic gases even if the primary seal fails. The market data is absolute. In 2026, China commands nearly 90% of all dual-fuel automotive carrier orders, over 70% of green methanol tankers, and 65% of ammonia-powered VLCCs.
The highest form of monopoly isn't about market share, it's about setting the rules. For a century, maritime law was written in London or Rotterdam. But today, with China making 70% of the world's green ships, its own factory standards are becoming the global rules. From new fuel workflows to autonomous ship communications, the world now runs on China's metrics.
Having come this far, we can actually sit down, push aside the grand narratives, and talk about something more fundamental. Many people ask, why has the Chinese shipbuilding industry been so successful? Is it because of some mysterious Eastern force? Actually, it is not. Stripping away all the grand and spectacular exteriors, what governs it is still cold economic law. We must admit that the rise of China's shipbuilding industry was to some extent a historical inevitability. Going back to the 1980s and 1990s, when China pushed its doors open, what it held in its hands was the world's largest pool of cheap labor at the time. Back then, it was not just shipbuilding, car manufacturers, home appliances, textiles, factories from developed countries all crowded here. There was no other reason, it was simply cheap. In the grand scheme of the global division of labor, What China took on back then was the lowest value-added, most grueling and exhausting part. There's nothing to shy away from here, as this is determined by economic laws. Just as today, China's low-end manufacturing is shifting to Vietnam and India, this is merely a repetition of historical cycles. But shipbuilding is very unique. China has been jokingly described as building the most ships in the world, carrying the heaviest worries in the world, and earning the thinnest profits in the world. It is a high-pollution, high-energy consuming, asset-heavy industry with profits as thin as razor blades. This kind of work is basically impossible to do if placed in the United States, Europe, or even present-day Japan and South Korea. Even if a government wanted to take it on, because the social costs are too high, you could not even afford the wages for ordinary workers. In a highly financialized society, talented young people will go to write code or work in investment banking. No one wants to spend a lifetime welding against hundreds of thousands of tons of steel on a shipyard slipway at minus 20 degrees. This brings us to the second truth behind the success of China's shipbuilding industry. It is not just a business, but a strategic choice. The government uses fiscal resources, essentially tax revenue, to sustain this strategic industry over the long term. In Western developed nations, it is difficult for the public to understand, why should my taxes be used to subsidize a shipyard that loses money year after year and makes little profit? This simply does not pass their logical framework. But in China, shipbuilding has been elevated to the height of national strategy. The government accepts its slim margins or even losses on the balance sheet because it values what lies behind it far more. It supports a massive steel industry, provides employment for millions of people, and more importantly, it ensures that in this era of geopolitical volatility, China will not be constrained by other nations. Ultimately, this is not just a victory of technology, but a choice of governance model. China spent 40 years achieving an undisputed world number one in a heavy industrial sector that was gradually abandoned by developed nations. Is this something to be proud of? Of course it is. But at the same time, it feels like there is no need to be overly proud either.